Right. And share my screen. So my daughter, teaching assistant, is not able to make it today, unfortunately. She's going over to a friend's house, but she wishes us well.
Mhm.
All right. Google Slides. Okay. So is everybody seeing combinations, the slide?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Feel free to keep your mics on. I think background noise is wonderful. And I don't care what it is. Chewing, typing, mowing your lawn. All right, so the
Hello,
combinations,
baby.
I know there's my little darling. This is our cat Juno, who is turning 3 on Easter Sunday, April 5th this year. And when I found out that his birthday was on Easter, I thought, okay, somehow that has to be like a workshop because that's too good of a coincidence. So then what's the theme? The theme is combinations of things. And he already had this cute little hat, which he will tolerate for minutes at a time. So, one of the combinations that I found in art history, this it's called object, but I've also heard it referred to as luncheon and fur. I don't know if that's just like the nickname or what, but this is a surrealist piece of art with found objects by Merritt Oppenheim, made in Paris in 1936. She took a, china tea set and spoon and covered it with fur. Surrealism is a lot about strange associations, juxtapositions. They made a lot of collages. It's about tapping into the unconscious brain, which, when you dream, you sometimes dream in things that can be interpreted in metaphors. There are often odd combinations in dreams, but somehow it like makes sense, when you're asleep in ways that it wouldn't make sense otherwise. But this is like such a visceral, work of art. I feel fur in my mouth when I'm looking at it. I think it's so cool because it's very beautiful, but it also has like this deep creepiness about it, which a lot of surrealism does have. That's it's not like written down in their philosophy that things are going to be like disturbing. It's more about like the unconscious process of embracing not knowing where you're going and taking chances and having like absurd things. But anyway, that's one type of combination that I think is super interesting. So when I taught many art classes at different schools, there was one class, and Michaela, who's on this call, was in my creating art course. We did a project that was about using found objects. And I remember one student brought in a novel that was wrapped in cellophane, like saran wrap. And that was very similar to this object. It just seemed really creepy. Like, why would you wrap a book in saran wrap? It just made me think of like bed bugs or something. Um, then this is a combination of 2D and 3D. We've got the actual Barbie doll and a comic, behind it. We've got these rocks that are 3D shaped like hearts, and then a placemat and a bookmark with rubber stamping. Um, I just love the combination of flat and round, a photograph, like a representation, and the real thing. Although the 3D Barbie is a representation too. That's a sculpture, and the heart is kind of I mean, it's a rock. It's representing a heart. So there's also that combination going on. This is a paint by number book that I got at I don't know, the dollar store or the grocery store many years ago. It's a combination of line art and this kind of pattern. It's sort of like the Ben-Day dots and areas, but then it goes to, different types of shapes. Um, so it's a combination, like each patch, like the shape behind the cat is made of blue, white, and yellow rectangles. That's a combination of specific shapes and colors, but then you look at it as a whole shape. So it's like Impressionism, like it's a combination of separate brushstrokes, but your eye sees them more from a distance as like kind of one color, or one thing. I can never paint these because they're so much cooler um, as the patterns. This is a painting by Gustave Moreau, Oedipus and the Sphinx. I just picked this one because of the Sphinx is a combination of human, lion, and some kind of bird. I don't know what kind of bird that's Sphinx is, but and I actually don't know if it's a lion. I don't know my mythology at all, but I do know it's a combination of living creatures put into one. And there was a trend happening when my daughter was reading, I don't know, like chapter books, like early reader kind of things. And it was first it was unicorns, but then it was like mermicorns, and then it was catacorns, which is like a cat head with a mermaid body and a unicorn horn. It kept making like what's more magical than that? What's half fairy and a Pegasus and a all these things. And these stories were so dull, so unimaginative. And it's like the more wild the creatures were, like the less imagination the writing had. Kate is on this call too. Kate Uhlman took these photographs after I talked about combinations in another little private course that I have. And Kate, do you want to say anything?
Just that it made me laugh. These bushes were engulfing this tiny house. It just was so bizarre. So, yeah.
And then she made this gorgeous painting
Oh,
of it. I know. Kate is an incredibly talented painter, comics artist, illustrator, graphic designer, very talented friend, good at conversation. Um, and I just think sometimes a combination like this is one thing overwhelms another, overpowers the other one. So I think about like if you eat something garlicky and then eat something sweet, the donut is overwhelmed by the Chinese food that you just had. Some combinations like can't exist like without one of the parties being sort of sacrificed or diminished. You might have a friend that makes you feel that way. That might be a bad sign. Um, but there's always there might be like a store that you go into that suddenly makes you feel that way, like you're not yourself anymore. You can't be. You're somehow like so affected by this combination. Um, so the combinations, like dogs and cats, obviously they can be enemies, but if you have a dog and a cat, like this is my dog Pepsi and my cat Juno, they are
yeah, he
always
was.
entertaining. Was that mom?
Sorry.
Oh, you didn't weren't trying to say something.
No.
Uh, these pictures are kind of similar, except, Pepsi looks super suspicious in the top one, which he often does, and more trusting in the bottom one. They don't usually when they're sitting this close together, it only lasts for about 3 minutes. So I always have my camera ready. Um, but they often are just like doing a parallel thing, like looking at me with the same look on their face at the top of the stairs. Or if I'm changing the sheets, they both get into the bed and try to interfere, or they both go up to the vacuum and get in the way. They just kind of they have this like secret relationship, parallel activity. Pepsi has shut them together alone in the bathroom, and I'll think, why is it so quiet in here? Where are the pets? I have to go looking and like, who's in the bathroom? Why is that door closed? And they will both be completely quiet the whole time they're in there. I don't know. They just do really strange things. This was a really gorgeous bouquet of flowers for my friend Katie that she gave me years ago. And then one rose just lasted much longer than the others. So it can be things that are really similar. They all were kind of the same rose. And then one, just had a die-hard attitude, I guess. This rose, I think it is called like an Alice in Wonderland or Queen of Hearts rose or something, because it does look like it was painted. But sometimes a combination exists like within one thing. That's really interesting. I love these two-toned roses. I think are the coolest. That just makes them so special. And then we've got little snow animals that Finn and I made a long time ago, and two of my stuffed animals. Friends. Friends are combinations. A friendship is its own thing. And a lot of times I've had a really hard time like starting a novel and getting into it and reading the whole thing. And a lot of what I've realized is that the ones that I put down, there isn't a really good relationship. The main character, it's like all about alienation. It's all about the problem that they have in certain relationships or people like not understanding them or something. But I think like in a TV show, they often have really, really flawed characters, characters you wouldn't want in your life probably. But those characters find each other. And if they have a friendship, a really good relationship, it makes you like them, even though they're very flawed. Um, it makes them human. Friendship brings about something in us that is better than our actual characteristics a lot of times. Combinations for cookie platters and for like assorted chocolates and stuff, very important. Just knowing uh, that there's so much variety. There's a surprise in every choice, Um, variety and unity are two characteristics in art that are almost the most important factors, but it's also characteristics in absolutely everything. If you look at nature, there cannot be too much unity in nature. There has to be variety, a huge amount for an ecosystem to work. And I think like just in terms of culture, I asked my students at the Art Institute, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I had noticed that individually they often talked about, feeling left out, feeling like they didn't belong anywhere. And I thought, how can all of my students have this same horrible feeling of like disconnection when these are students that are at an art school where they have something in common with every other student here? This should be like the place where people just like instantly find a community. And so I asked them, there were, 15 students, so it wasn't like a big survey or anything, but I just said, has there been a time in your life when you have really, really felt like you were part of a community, like something bigger than your circle of friends or something? And only one student said yes. And the community that he felt part of was the military. And I thought, wow, that like blows my mind because your identity is so pared down. You have such a specific role in the military, such a specific, like command structure and so many rules. And you're wearing a uniform. And it's like that's what it takes for community is this sort of like complete elimination of identity. Um, and I don't know if that's always the way community works, but it does seem to be kind of the way I've seen a lot of it because there's all these groups do form around like a lot of shared, sameness, a lot of unity, unifies a community. And I think it would be great if people could somehow get better at feeling at home or in community with a lot of variety. And I think that's what people like want. But I think as soon as we are confronted with a ton of variety, which, another word is diversity, um, I think a lot of people really struggle with that because you have different beliefs, you have different opinions, you have different backgrounds, you have different senses of style, different priorities. It can be hard to it's not natural to get along. Um, Anyway, it's not as glorious as a cookie platter, with lots of variety. I mean, if we took a cookie platter and really made more variety, well, then there would be savory things. Then there would be, something with garlic, shedding the garlic all over, the sugar cookies and ruining them. And that's the thing with variety is there are relationships or combinations where one thing is affected negatively by another, is diminished by another. And that's one of the big challenges. I mean, if you look at nature, like, okay, we put the coyotes with the rabbits, it's good for one of them, not so good for the other. um, so, uh, anyway, in artwork, it's, much lower stakes. It's like, do we have a lot of bright colors? Do we have a lot of neutral colors? There's some variety. Let's throw in something with hard edges and something with curves. Um, that's just such a beautiful picture. I really want you to take time to soak it in. A combination of the things you couldn't finish in lunch. um, I don't know why. Sometimes when like enough kind of unappealing things go together, um, it becomes appealing to me because it's funny then. It's like, oh, one pathetic thing is kind of sad, but if you have three pathetic things, now it's happy. Um, so in Germany, there is a soda called Spezi that is Coke and Fanta put together. Um, and we have, like, if you go shopping for soda now, there's like 100 different types of Coke. But I still don't know if we don't have like one packaged drink that's like orange Coke, I don't think. Do we? I don't know.
There's an orange cream
Orange
Pepsi
cream.
maybe that came out
Okay.
like a year ago. It's pretty gross. I've tried it.
All right. Well, Coke and Fanta is actually a delicious combination. So if you have to do it yourself, I recommend it. Classic mac and cheese with veggie dogs or hot dogs and peas, or just two of those things. This is a perfume bottle that my grandma passed down to me and a painting that I made of it. I did a few of these paintings of objects that I had. And one of them was a little like house that was a music box. And Finn, when she was like 7 or something, she said, "We don't need that painting. We have the music box." I was like, "What do you mean we don't need that painting? I made it. It's a decoration." And also, like, why is the real thing better than the painting of it? Why not get rid of the music box? But really, like, why not get rid of them both? You don't need either. But they're beautiful things. Do we need decoration? No. All right. So those are my combinations. And I'm going to stop the share now and tell a little story. I have to stop talking because I can't do two things at once. Okay, get back to gallery view. Okay, why does it look so funny? Sorry. Okay, gallery view. There we go. Hi Ferris, I see your nice colorful grid. Why am I not on? Start my video. There we go. Meant to say about the dogs and cats. I was just going to tell the story of why we got Pepsi and Juno. So we had a dog, Crookie, for 16 and a half years, and she, was getting very old and not doing really well. And I actually thought she was going to die like 18 months before she died. So it was just like a long, long time of having this like ancient dog. And I kept thinking, like, is she alive or is she asleep? That kind of thing. And I was, grieving for her the whole time, because I had decided, like, absolutely, she is our last dog. I had postpartum puppy, what a puppy partum, I don't know. The period after I got Crookie was so hard and lasted so long. She was such a hard puppy to raise. And having a baby is so hard, but it's like a baby, like you just know, you got to suck it up and get through it. And I also decided, okay, Finn is my last baby, never again. But she's still alive, so I didn't need to replace her. Um, with Crookie, I was like, oh, it's either, a replacement or no dog. So what happened is it was the pandemic and we were having all these play dates in this, Finn's friend's yard, I was talking to her mother and the two kids were off playing and they were going to adopt a puppy. And they had like visited and they were getting all excited and they already had a dog too, an adult dog. Um, and I just couldn't stand it. The envy, I was like, I cannot sit here and watch some other family get a puppy when I don't have a puppy. So, I was like, said to my husband, like, okay, fine, get a puppy. He knows me. He knows that if I say something like that, it's like a dumb impulse and I'm going to change my mind. So he gets to work. He was looking everywhere. He knew like every shelter animal and was showing me their pictures. He knew every breeder in the tri-state area. He was like, he was going to put a deposit down and secure us a puppy within hours. So he arranged to get Pepsi. Um, have I had regrets? We won't go into that. That's not what the story is about. But that's how I decided to get Pepsi. And the dogs overlapped by 3 months, which I had to say it did make the death of Crookie so much less, it was like I was totally already in this puppy land, so if you are in that situation, like I do recommend an overlap. But it is harder to keep like a puppy away from an old dog that they're like trying to bother all the time. The cat, I always thought I was allergic to cats, and I never had a cat growing up. I just figured I will never have a cat. That's just an experience I'm never going to have. And Finn was begging for a cat for years. She started when she was, pretty small and it waxed and waned. And then I got an allergy test and I wasn't allergic to cats. So I was like, oh, geez, I can't let her know. That's my reason not to get one. But she did find out. And then, she like went through another year of intense begging and then sort of backed off a little bit. And then we were having dinner, and she was having a really, really hard time with like awful kids at school in 6th grade. And she really wanted to switch schools. She was begging to go to a different middle school. And Scott and I just like, we really did not want that to happen because we figured she would run into the same problems at a new school and they might be much bigger because we knew things about this other school that like weren't good. Um, so I said while we were eating, and my intent was just to like figure out she has to kind of realize like that there's a difference between something you really really want and that just all these requests, she always wants something, and so I said, like, I knew how much she wanted a cat and I said, well, what would, like, hypothetically, what would you rather have, stay at your school and get a cat or switch to this other school? I was trying to like make her say, I want to go to this school even more than I want a cat, is kind of how it was playing out in my mind. Um, and Scott and I kept talking, and she just like went totally quiet for minutes. And Scott and I kept talking, and then she finally said, okay, I'll stay at King Arts and get a cat. It was like, it wasn't actually an offer. It was just like a bit of dumb conversation. But we got a cat. Stayed at King Arts. So that's how we have Juno. And then that's how Juno's birthday is on Easter. And that's how I make major decisions. And as a teacher, as your university professor, I really want you to learn it's got to be based on envy that you can't control, a dumb impulse, or something you say that people misunderstand. Those are the ways to make a major life decision. And then, like, you can't really regret it because it's kind of like something that just happened. I think the decisions you really regret are the ones where you actually did sit down and make that pros and cons list. Think it through. No, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about pets. Anyway, that goes through my thoughts about combinations. So now we are I'm going to stop the recording. There we go.